Hello, welcome back to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller here with arts reporter Toni Tresca. Hey, Toni, how's it going?
Hey, Alex, a long time no see. How's it been going with you?
All right, just been busy doing this and that. And so we took the week off. And did you get any blowback from people that was outraged that we didn't?
I know only one concerned text message from a fellow and fabulous arts and culture reporter over at CPR, Eden Lane. She reached out just to make sure that nothing had happened and the podcast would be returning. And so to you, Eden, and any other concerned listeners out there who we were just rest assured we're all good. We just took some time off for family affairs.
Yeah. There were some people picketing outside my house, but I assured them that we'd be back. So.
Oh, thank goodness. I'm glad you were able to quell the protesters.
Like I mentioned, I think last time, my son, Andy, who's often my plus one at the theater, has moved to Guam for a 6-month contract working at an island resort there. So we were doing a bunch of kind of going away stuff with him and getting, helping him get ready and all that.
The picture you sent of him on the beach in Guam, he just looks so natural. He fits right in on the beach with his Hawaiian shirt on and just sunglasses. He looks like he's going to have a good 6 months up there.
Yeah. I was often compelled to tell Andy if we were going to maybe the Denver Center or something like that, I'd be like, Andy, come on, you got something other than a Hawaiian shirt, or at the very least, flatten your collar out a little bit. So anyway, well, where were you? You were in New York, right?
Yeah, I was up in New York for my cousin's graduation, which I actually did. I ended up watching from the bar next door with my sister via live stream. I know. I was like, I flew to New York for this, but we ended up as a small graduation, so they only had a limited number of tickets. And I have a very big family, and so me and my sister and a couple of other folks we watched via live stream.
So probably very rare for being able to watch a high school graduation and have cocktails at the same time, huh?
It was a wonderful experience. I had a great time with my sister.
That's great.
Yeah. So, and the rest of the trip was really good too. I was over in the Long Island area, and so I caught up with a bunch of my family who I had not seen since a lot of them before the pandemic. So that was good.
Wow. Yeah. That's where I grew up. I grew up not too far, I think, from where you were. You're in Islip, right?
That's right, East Islip area.
My dad used to take us out to Islip Speedway and would watch the figure eights and the crack up derbies. He loved that stuff. So anyway, well, I think we were both out at the theater last night. I saw Buntport's show. So they're doing this. They're calling it Testing 1, 2, 3, and they've got 3 different shows. The one last night was called the Game Show or something like that. And it was really funny. It was like an hour of them kind of testing out different game show formats that everybody knows. Like they did a Family Feud, they did a Taskmaster, which apparently is a really popular thing that I just recently heard about. It's like a British show
I've never
or something.
Heard of it.
Yeah, and then they did a round of Trivial Pursuit. And so it was funny. It was a couple of the regulars, Aaron Rollman was the MC, and Eric Edborder was sort of like the stage hand. He also played a giant sweat sock at one point. And
that then sound like classic Buntport.
Yeah, and then Brian and Hannah Dugan were on the other team, and then fellow named Evan, and then the woman from the King Penny show, Libby, was on the other team. So it was a great cast, very, very, just very silly, very fun, and so I'll be doing a little something about that. So what were you out last night?
I was over at the Denver Center in the Garner Galleria Theater to see Broadway's next hit musical, which is an improvised show. I think you're going to see this one tonight, right?
Yeah.
So
it's June 15th as we're speaking, by the way. So that's the reference point. Saturday, June 15th. So what'd you think?
I thought it was interesting. I thought that the first half, features they take suggestions from the audience in the lobby where you write down song titles that you'd like to have them improvise. And Be totally honest, the first two suggestions from the songs were kind of a little bit lame. And so I think that kind of affected the scenes. But then the third song ended up being from this hilarious musical, The Pasta King. It was this, what the hell is this number? And that ended up being really high point of the show. And that was the musical that ultimately the audience voted that they wanted to see fully produced in the second act. And so we spent the second act in the world of 1916 New York, watching the Pasta King battle the Pasta Queen. And so it was pretty funny. All of the melodies were very put together. But yeah, I think that interestingly, the weakest part, and they made a joke about this at the start of the show. They were like, listen, since we're taking your song suggestions, if the show's not funny tonight, it's actually because you guys aren't funny.
It's
and
your
I was
fault.
like, I felt that with those first two.
Always blame the audience.
You know, when in doubt, that was definitely the host's go-to strategy. Every time a joke was bombing, he would just turn on the audience.
That's great. So the first act was kind of like testing a couple of ideas, and they picked the best one, and then the second act they expand on it.
That's right. So the framing device is the first act is at the Phony Awards, and so they're doing performances of these fake musical numbers that they're making up on the spot. They do a little scene into it, and then they make up the song. And then at the end of the first act, you vote on which song should win the Phony Award, and then that show you see in the second act.
All right. Cool. And so that one's running through the end of the month or thereabouts?
Yes, through June 30th. So, and a new show every time. So even if you've already seen it or seen it in another town, because they've been touring for like 12 years, just all around the country. It's doing this show, or all around the world, excuse me. Don't want to limit them to the domestic market.
So a little bit like the Improvised Shakespeare Company, their focus is on Broadway. Yeah, it's cool.
Very similar. That's a great comparison.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to getting out to that tonight to check it out. So, So, as usual, we're going to review some of the latest shows that we've seen. I mentioned some of the new reviews that we've got on the site, as well as our weekly list, our top 10 Colorado headliners. So these are shows of particular interest that we think you should try to catch, or that we've seen, or just to kind of put on the radar. Also later in the podcast is a really fun interview that I did with Caroline Bowman, who's been playing Elsa in the touring production of Disney's Frozen for 5 years now. So Elsa, Frozen's no longer on Broadway, so she's pretty much, this is it. This touring production is the only way to see Frozen right now. And she was great. It's a really fun interview. She was telling me things like, how she still gets nervous when she's winding up to sing Let It Go, because it's such a well-known song. And I kind of felt like I was talking to Elsa. I mean, someone who's played the character, she's really close to that character so much, and so it's a really fun conversation. So, but yeah, it's plenty of chances to see it. It's a long run from June 19th to July 3rd. So,
I'm looking forward to seeing that. I have not seen the Frozen stage production. I know you saw it back when it was here in Denver in the tryout back in, what was that, 2017?
Yeah, I think I don't think that I saw it. My wife saw it, and actually,
your wife saw it.
Yeah,
that's right.
But I'll be there Thursday, and you'll be there as well.
That's right.
Yeah,
I'll see you at the show.
Yeah, I like Frozen. It's a great Disney movie. So. Anyway, well, one of the things that we kind of our main topic this week is disappearing theaters, and maybe even a little bit of toxic culture in the I don't know, it's the Colorado theater community or the Denver metro area theater community, but there's I don't know, some social media stuff that we wanted to dive into because it's kind of interesting. So just in the past week or so, we've learned that two of our, sort of our favorite, like really great theaters in the metro area, Curious and Benchmark, are giving up their homes. And then also the Esquire. Can you tell me a little bit about the Esquire? I've never, believe it or not, been there.
Yeah, so it's run by the Landmark Theaters. And earlier this year, and I think it was around March, they announced that they would be closing their Esquire theater location, and it was going to be repurposed into upscale apartments, restaurants, and things like that. So previously, yeah, I know. But the city was clear. It's going to be through their adaptive reuse program. So I guess they'd call it historically accurate gentrification that they're going to be doing over there. But nevertheless, it's a big loss because this venue, in addition to showing independent films in this space, it also housed a number of live performance acts. Like they were kind of one of the main hubs for Colorado is Elusive Ingredient, which does the Rocky Horror Shadowcast production each month. And they're losing that spot there. In addition, they also hosted other smaller comedy acts and open mic nights and things like that. So it was a real space for creativity. And so it'll definitely be a loss for the neighborhood.
Oh, man. Well, yeah. Well, so, and tell me, what do we know about Curious and Benchmark and their situation?
Yeah, so Curious Theater, as we reported earlier this year on the podcast, they launched a Fund the Future campaign to try to raise money in order to save the space, and they ended up not meeting their goals with that campaign. So they decided to put its longtime home at on the market, and so they're going to be just exploring different models here. We don't actually have a ton of great answers at the current moment. They're still looking. They've listed the building at the moment. They have some people who have looked at it. No active bids to my knowledge as of recording this on June 15th. But yeah, they're going to be switching to being a nomadic troupe, more similar to Local Theater Company and Betsy, who have been doing this for years, along with a number of other companies.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Acoma Center there, it's an old church, and I got to be honest, I mean, the handwriting was on the wall, it's really expensive to keep a building like that, up to speed, and I think it needed, lots of renovation, roof, and all kinds of other stuff, and they were looking for $750,000, I think.
That's right.
And even if they got that, I don't know, how long could it be sustained even after that?
Right, because from my knowledge of the situation, this Fund the Future campaign was just to pay down their current debts, as well as do the additional maintenance that they needed to keep the building operational. This was not to kind of like set them up for a big next phase or really be able to do a full remodel. It was just to get it operable. And so I totally agree with you. The writing is definitely on the wall. The last show that I went to, Colorado, on opening night, there was definitely kind of a sense that it felt kind of like the last time.
Right. Yeah, and the kind of shows they do, they're not necessarily filling the house all the time. So.
Yeah, that's totally true, and I think that's very similar to the situation that Benchmark found itself in too. That's another company. I mean, I personally think that Curious and Benchmark are doing some of the most interesting artistic works, and they often really knock it out of the park. But there's no denying that often when I am sitting in those theaters, I am one of just a handful who is in the space. And in my conversation, I chatted with Neil Trugolo and Haley Johnson, who are very artistic and executive director over at Benchmark about this decision last week, and they were pretty candid about that. It was just like they would do shows like Blasted, which both you and I showed up. Yeah. We really enjoyed it. It was a really difficult experience, but I thought it was ultimately a worthwhile, very artistically fulfilling to go and challenge myself in that way. But it was one of the really successful shows to date. And so when you're trying to build an audience, particularly at a pandemic, that's not the kind of momentum you need, particularly when you're trying to also pay rent. And so ultimately, they also made the decision to kind of cancel the rest of their season this year. And they, as of June 2nd, they moved out of the space.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different story in that building is nothing special. It's kind of a nondescript building there, but it was a good space for them. But I mean, I don't think they should have trouble finding other venues to work out of.
Yeah, it was over 1560 Teller Street over in Lakewood. A little bit out of the way for everybody, unless you live over in Lakewood as well. And I agree. I think that Benchmark is they've got a good reputation within the community. Haley, Neil, and Mark Stith, who are over there, the leadership team, they've got a lot of connections. So I think they'll be able to land on their feet. And I hope that they do come back, because I think that Benchmark, Curious, they're doing work that other companies just aren't. Neil was honest. He was like, if we could always turn to the canon, he said, and do a show that's been done like 16 times.
Music Man.
Maybe people might see the 17th time. Exactly. He used the example of Cabaret, which, I mean, how many productions of Cabaret have we seen recently? I mean, there's one that's at the freaking Tonys this year again. So, I think it's particularly hard for companies who aren't doing these things that have a built-in audience, particularly as they're coming out of the pandemic, trying to rebuild audience and other expenses are going up. So the room for error is just a whole lot lower.
Right. You mentioned another one, Backstory Theater in Broomfield. I don't know too much about that space.
They're a children's theater over in Broomfield, and they've they just recently moved into a new space, and they were expecting to have another tenant who was going to help them kind of shoulder the cost of rent. However, that agreement ultimately ended up falling through, and so they've faced significant financial difficulties. Their executive and artistic director, Nigel Nultz, left in March after the board cut his salary to about a third of what he was prepared to take in response to this. It was really hard there, and he was Nigel, to his credit, was very understanding. He was very much just like, I understand that this is for the company, but I absolutely cannot accept that salary as a human being.
Yes.
And so it really just highlights that kind of struggle to find sustainable income and community support in the current landscape.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was talking to Chris Medina from Funky Little Theater Company in Colorado Springs, who was on the podcast last time, they've moved around a couple of times, and they did eventually find a home at a kind of a community center that's owned by the city of Colorado Springs. So, the plus side being that, it's a city-owned facility, so they get all that backup. The downside being you've got to deal with, a big bureaucracy that's, may have different ideas about things, but I think a lot of theaters are going to be looking at how do you balance those things?
Yeah. I'm hoping that maybe this kind of departure from these spaces can maybe lead to a new wave of innovation and potentially collaboration between current venues in the space. I know that Vintage, with its next season, it announced 2 co-productions on its lineup with 2 nomadic troupes. So I think that's a really positive step in the right direction when it comes to actually putting your money and your support where your mouth is and being like, we want to build this vibrant theater community and support each other. Why don't we work together?
Absolutely. And we also know that there's a lot of these places sit empty a lot of times.
It's another great point. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, maybe a theater can go in and do the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, slot, or God forbid, Mondays.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you see other venues around town, and I know the music business industry and the theater are not a one-to-one comparison, but they're both audiences who are coming out to see live entertainment. And the Ogden, the Ball Arena, these spaces can sell out on Mondays and Tuesday nights. I don't think there's any reason that with the proper marketing efforts put behind these theater companies and these interesting collaborations that theater companies can't be doing the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Time to think outside the box, as they say. You had another theater that you were talking about on Santa Fe Drive.
Yeah, it's just up the road from where Su Teatro's space is now. It's the Aslan Theater on Santa Fe Drive, and they're a movie theater and performance space over there, and they're also at risk of being kind of going away as well, but for slightly different reasons. Them because the property taxes, the owner over there is claiming that the city is forcing him out because they have doubled the value of the property to about $1.65 million, which increased his tax bill from $22,000 to $37,000 a year, with no additional increase in income and no help for support or willingness from the city to kind of understand that even though he's property rich, this owner is very kind of cash poor. So really considering selling over there, which a lot of local advocates in the community argue would be a huge loss because this space has been a huge supporter of the Chicano community for decades over there. So it would just be a very historical space to the community that would be lost due to kind of city meddlings.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these property tax things are kind of baked in, and so if you want to cut deals or help people out or help businesses out, and this spills over onto the residential side quite a bit, and there's been a lot of movement in the state legislature and things, but I think a lot of times the municipalities are like, I'm not sure what I can do, and they're very happy to take that additional income, and to their detriment. What's going to go in there? Another friggin' mattress firm or something,
Probably. Honestly, though, knowing that strip, what's going to go in there is a high-rise apartment.
Yeah.
They're going to call it the Art District apartment. They may call it maybe the Aslan Apartments, name it after this. Yeah. I know. I'm sorry. I maybe just manifested that into existence. I hate this. That's awful.
So, is this the end of theater as we know it, or is this just a growing pain or a bump in the road, or what do you think?
I don't necessarily think it's the end of theater, because you do still see kind of these bigger spaces, spaces like the Denver Center and Candlelight still being able to thrive when they're doing these big shows and programming the entire year. I think that what this maybe can do is just hopefully strengthen the theater community to collaborate more with maybe local businesses, schools, cultural institutions around town to kind of really build up that trust and get people back interested in the arts community and back through the doors. And I think that's going to have to be through maybe smart season planning, smart marketing efforts, and really good collaborations. And there are some spaces around town that people can go if they don't have their own space. I mean, you highlighted a few.
Right. Yeah. There's, you mentioned the Boulder Dairy. There's the People's Building in Aurora, which has been a great space for, of course, the 2 Cent Lion is in there as the kind of the in-house company. There's the Roaming Gnome over in Aurora that I think is open to some. Buntport is really cool about, renting their space out for very low cost to anybody who wants to use it. And then there's other places like the Lakewood Cultural Center, which is, where you see Performance Now doing their shows. And that is a beautiful theater that I don't know what else is in there. I don't know how big of a lineup they have outside of, Performance Now, but I mean, that's a good one. That probably wouldn't be a good one for, say, Benchmark, even though it's in Lakewood, just because it's kind of on the big side. And then, there's a couple of others that you were thinking of as well, right?
Yeah, I know for rehearsal spaces, kind of over in Denver, the Three Leeches, they rent out rehearsal space, and Backstory over in Broomfield, who I mentioned just a second ago, is renting out rehearsal space as well. And then you've got the Bug Theater and the Elon Wolf Theater at the JCC, who rent out spaces for performances in Denver, as well as over in the Boulder area. You've got the Nomad Playhouse, E-Town Hall, and the Canyon Theater over at the Public Library. So there are spaces, and then there's also these kind of other maybe less traditional theater spaces that I think people are kind of underutilizing, potentially, including schools, churches, and just other community spaces that are available, often for pretty cheap, or these organizations are willing to make deals.
Yeah, and they may not be ideal. They're probably kind of a great light setup or, dressing rooms or stuff, but, the love of theater, the passion can, if you can get the audience in there, they're going to be more, you can do that kind of thing and without ideal situations. So, yeah. And, thinking outside the metro area, I know there's a lot of the kind of the wealthier mountain towns have created spaces, some of which already have an in-house company like the Breckenridge Theater, which has the Backstage Theater in it. So, I think most theater companies that are looking for a space are going to cast around and find stuff that, and figure out whether it fits in their budget or if it fits into their program. And as you mentioned, some theaters that have their own space can, help those that don't, and also help themselves by maybe getting a little bit of additional revenue from that. So,
yeah, totally. And I think the kind of final point in this conversation I wanted to raise is just the roles of audiences in this situation. In my conversation with Neil, he said something that really stuck with me. He said, if you want these things in your town, like theaters and arts organizations, to be viable, you have to show up to support them. not just theater, but it's anything you love. If you like that we have a ballet, but you never go, guess what? Pretty soon there's not going to be a ballet. You don't show up to support the things you claim to value, they will go away. I just think that we as audience members, maybe not just you and us, but you and I specifically, audiences collectively have a lot more control over the theater scene that exists here in Colorado than we give ourselves credit to by what we show up to, or more honestly, what we don't show up to.
Yeah. And, it also harkens back to the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago about arts journalism and that role of, marketing, whether it's earned media, paid media, whatever, there's lots of things you can do beyond just, buying expensive ads in Westward, the Denver Post, whatever.
Totally. It's funny you mentioned that. Neil made that same comparison. He said, it's all connected too. The decline of journalism really hurts organizations, particularly like Benchmark, he noted, because unlike when you're doing Beauty and the Beast or something, or Cabaret, to continue our kind of comparison, it doesn't matter what the critics say. People will see the name, they'll either go to it or won't based off of the name recognition. Right. With the show like Blasted, you really do kind of need that community, that support, somebody, an advocate, somebody going in and being like, this is the best thing, you need to go out here to see it. And so when you have less people doing that, it becomes harder and harder for those voices to get out, / they've got to get craftier in their marketing and figure out how to adapt to this new ecosystem that we're living in, which is challenging.
Absolutely. So you had kind of 3 main things that you think theaters can do. Have you touched on all those?
I touched on the first one already. So kind of the collaborative programming, the co-producing. I think another good option that we kind of jumped around and alluded to is more resource sharing, like lending out or renting out your space for things. I know Miners Alley is definitely interested in doing stuff like this with their kind of collaborative build space that they've got underneath the theater. And then I think just finally is figuring out financial and logistical ways that you can kind of support each other. Maybe it's so hard because I know theater's already a very tight industry with low margins, but just figuring out ways to assist with grant writing and fundraising efforts for other theaters without their own spaces, even if it's something just as simple as sharing it on your own social media, shouting out these other companies who exist in the area. So I think those resource sharing, kind of collaborative programming, and financial and logistical support are my big 3 areas.
Right. Yeah, and I would also mention that I met with Kristen Crampton Day with the Colorado Business Committee for the Arts, and that's also a great resource. They also have one of their programs is like pro bono or whatever, free or low cost legal advice for companies looking to get grants and nonprofits looking to get grants and things like that. So, in addition to looking to the other members of the theater community, there's also some other organizations that help out. And okay, so in the spirit of cooperation, that we were just talking about, there's also apparently there's some people out there that feel that maybe that's a little bit lacking. There was on the Colorado Theater Guild Facebook page, somebody named Jace Johnson wrote, is anyone else feeling heartbroken by the state of regional theater in Denver post-pandemic? There used to be so many more opportunities for actors. Now I'm lucky to see a single audition posted for a job within the city. There's no sign of recovery. It's such a shame. I feel like what was already a small business is shrinking out of sight. And it generated 38 comments, and some of which were pretty caustic or had a pretty grim view of things. So playwright Mike Brommel wrote, "The old ways haven't worked for a decade. It predates the pandemic. A group of us long ago left the traditional community theater model behind and never looked back." Said that they've found that even taking the shows and moving them beyond to other destinations beyond Colorado so that they can actually extend their run of a show for years, not just a couple of weekends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. The sentiment was definitely kind of expressed by a number of folks on the thread who were just kind of a lot of very direct contempt for what was kind of dubbed the traditional theater model or the closed Colorado theater scene. And there were some people who were pushing back. Like I saw the audacious theater director write in the comments section. She brought up the fact that these auditions do get posted quite a bit in the Colorado Theater Guild, as well as on the Facebook page where people are kind of doing these things, trying to get the word out. But they often find for their shows, and they do immersive shows kind of, that they find for their thing that is outside the traditional model, people don't show up. So they were kind of also being like, you're saying these things, but then you don't show up for the opportunities that are available currently within the community. And so I thought that was an interesting tension in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Lyra Mares, stage manager extraordinaire, kind of pitched in and said, I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of places to reimagine how they do business. The old ways no longer work, and we can't count on subscribers and programming. And things have just got to be more varied to attract a younger audience. So, we know that, you and like my 22-year-old son, Andy, are often the youngest people in the theater at a lot of shows. And there's something that theaters are always trying to do. That's probably maybe a topic for another time, is how do you attract younger audiences to theater? So.
Yeah, because unless it's something like, I imagine when I go see Frozen, that's going to be packed with young audience members. But unless it's something that's really a family show, aimed directly at like kids, that's not really who I think theaters and totally need to be focusing on. It's a very important sector. Children's theater, children's education is incredible, but a little bit older as well is, how do you get that age range in as well? What are they interested in? Definitely a conversation for another day. But some folks in the thread are not interested. We're not really interested in having that. Like one Trixie Carwell just was stated, quite frankly, I cannot wait to move out of this town. I have a story regarding disgusting cancel culture in this town. Denver theater is a very gossipy, negative club. The reason it's going down the tubes is the mentality that has been allowed to propagate here. Only the chosen few get gigs. If they don't like you, they'll ruin you and your livelihood. Denver's breakdown is deserved based on the disgusting behavior of its competitive, jealous community. They deserve it. So, it's a kind of a full-throated indictment of the community and that kind of closed nature that I alluded to just a second ago.
Yeah. Well, that's just a couple of opinions. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think everything's all, rainbows and unicorns, but most of the people I meet in the theater community around here are pretty darn nice and welcoming and all that.
They are, but I guess I also can't help but also acknowledge the reality that I have a ton of friends who are like my age in the community who like every week I'll get a call or a text from someone who is like, I'm moving. It's just not tenable here for one reason or another. So it's hard. There is definitely something that's not quite working within the current industry. And so I think RS comment that it's a great opportunity to reimagine how we do business is super fitting.
Right. All right. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, look at our Colorado headliners, plus my interview with Caroline Bowman, who is Elsa from Disney's Frozen. So stick around. We'll be right back. OnStage Colorado is supported in part by the Colorado Fine Arts Center at Colorado College. Tickets for their upcoming season are on sale now and include Dial M for Murder, The City Dog and the Prairie Dog, In Her Bones, and The Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed. More at fac.colorado.college.edu. OnStage Colorado is brought to you by the Aurora Fox Arts Center, whose production of The Lightning Thief, the Percy Jackson musical, runs through June 23rd. Adapted from the first book of the best-selling fantasy series, the show springs to life with dazzling special effects and a riveting pop-rock score capturing the imaginations of children and adults alike. Tickets at aurorafoxartscenter.org. The OnStage Colorado podcast is also sponsored by Town Hall Art Center, whose production of The Prom runs through June 23rd. Big city stars set themselves on a collision course with small-town PTA politicians in this sequin-covered musical comedy. Get tickets at townhallartcenter.org. Support also comes from the Boulder Ensemble Theater Company, Betsy, whose upcoming season starts in July and includes Grounded, Enemy of the People, The Ballad of Paula Aguilar, Little Women, Hope and Gravity, and The White Chip. More information at betsy.org. All right, we're back here with the OnStage Colorado podcast. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca.
And we hit our top 10 headliners this week.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got 10 this week from all around the state. I guess I can start us off over in the Boulder area with the Boulder Comedy Festival that's coming up. It's June 19th through 23rd. It's at multiple venues, including Junkyard Social, the Dairy Arts Center, Thinking Garb, and Boco Ciders all around Boulder County. It got dozens of comedians who are performing on the roster. I got a chance to chat with the founder, Zoe Rogers, who they hosted their first one in 2021, and she just sounded super excited about the lineup. She was able to curate this year. This is the most venues, the most comics, and they hope the biggest audience turn out. So get those tickets now, June 19th through the 23rd.
And is that story out?
It is. It's out in Boulder Weekly. It's it was a piece not directly about the Boulder Comedy Festival. It was kind of a look at the operations of festivals around the state, including the Colorado Music Festival, the Durango Play Fest, we'll talk it to in a second, and like Creve Repertory Theater. So all these kind of different community leaders talking about how they run summer festivals.
All right. Well, my first one is Frozen, Disney's Frozen, I should say, at the Buell Theater. It's the touring Broadway show we talked about just a little bit ago, and we'll have an interview with the Elsa actor here in just a little bit. So that's all I'll say about that one. So that's going to be running from the 19th of June all the way into early July. So that's a great one to take the kids to, and adults as well.
Absolutely. And I've got another one that's good for people of all ages. It's Legally Blonde, the musical, over at Parker Arts. So this is the musical adaptation based off of the Reese Witherspoon movie about a young woman who, after getting broken up with, decides to enroll in Harvard Law School to win back her man. But it ultimately becomes about a lot more than that. She goes on this wacky whirlwind journey at the law school where she learns about herself. And so that musical is running June 28th through July 21st over at Parker Arts.
And is that a Sasquatch production?
It is. Yeah, it's Sasquatch Productions, and it's being done by an entirely female production team over there.
Right. All right. Well, my next one is one we've also already talked about, Broadway's next hit musical. So we kind of covered that off, but I'm definitely looking forward to going to see that.
So my next one is High School Musical, another musical based off of a movie. This one is based off of the Disney movie about Troy and Gabriella. Troy is a basketball star. Gabriella is more of a quiet science person, and their unlikely romance that flourishes in a theater. So it's, I've really enjoyed, I think this musical has a lot of really fun songs. It's being done in Johnstown at Candlelight Dinner Theater. So you get dinner and a show up there. And I think this one will be a lot of fun to see on that stage. I'm looking forward to seeing how they do the basketball sequences in particular.
Yeah. All right. My next one is Up in the Hills in Carbondale. POTUS, or Behind Every Great Dumbass, or Seven Women Trying to Keep Him Alive. And this is at Thunder River Theater Company. Yeah, the title is one of those, a great title. And this one's directed by Kate Gleason, who's a pretty well-known director around here. And it's got a great cast. I can't remember. I know Missy Moore, who's Thunder River's artistic director, is going to be in it. Great comic actress. And then a bunch of others. And so I would also say, if you haven't been up to, if you're up in like the Aspen or Glenwood Springs area, Carbondale's kind of in between there. It's a great little town with a wonderful downtown, and Thunder River has its own really cool theater space in there. So check that out if you happen to be up that way, June 14th through 30th.
Yeah, sounds fun. I've not been up there, so I maybe have to get there. And it's a great script to go.
Yeah.
Make the drive for. So my next one's also a bit of a drive for anybody located in the Boulder, Denver area, but it is the Durango Play Fest. It's coming up June 25th through 30th at the Durango Art Center, and it features stage readings of 4 new works. So we're going to be doing All That Remains by Richard Dresser, Circle Forward by Hyatt, Pop That A by James Anthony Tyler, and Miss Einstein by Kathleen Cahill. Over there. And so they've been working with these playwrights for a little while now, kind of curating these 4 artists from around the country. We'll bring them to Durango and then present them to the public June 25th through the 30th.
All right. I have never been in the town of Durango. Someday.
I can't say that I have either.
Yeah. Yeah, but I've lived in Colorado on and off for, since 1980. So I have no excuse. I've driven past the way, on to Point South, but I've heard they have a wonderful program down there. So coming up further north, back a little closer to town, but at Rocky Mountain Repertory Theater is going to be doing Kinky Boots, which is, nothing new, but it's a fun show, and it kicks off their repertory season. And they're also doing The Music Man and Come From Away, Come From Away is becoming sort of a staple of its own, even though it's on the newer side.
It's a great musical. I mean, it's about this like weird Canadian town that took in a bunch of plane passengers on the day of 9/11.
Yeah.
And the music is really touching. I think it makes a lot of sense for companies to do, because you can really sparsely stage it, or you can kind of do it pretty lavishly, and it works really well because the story and music are just that powerful.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think the town was weird. It was just an odd situation.
You're right. I mischaracterized it slightly. My apologies to any of our Canadians listeners out there, or anybody from that town. I did not mean to offend you guys. Thank you for your service during that difficult time for the world.
All right. So, what else have you got, Tony?
My final pick is Grounded by Betsy. I know you just did an interview with Ann Penner, who is
great actor. Yeah.
Great local actress, and this play is she's done this play several times, and it is a piece about a fighter pilot who is in the U.S. Air Force who gets assigned to the chair force in a bunker outside Vegas after an unplanned pregnancy, and there she and other pilots are at computers operating drones in bombing raids thousands of miles away, and so it's kind of this introspective piece kind of reflecting on this situation, led by what I am told from Mark Reagan's review, which he wrote for OnStage Colorado before he was at Betsy, is a really just leads to a stirring performance by Anne, which I believe.
Yep. Yeah, I did an interview style story with her, and she talked a lot about, how you manage being on stage all by yourself, and kind of the ways that she and director mapped out like sort of a grid, like this part of the stage represents this, and this is that, and some of the the beats that they figured out to make it all work. And if you look at that story, there's also a link to Mark Reagan, who's currently the kind of the managing director of Betsy, which he wrote this. He wrote a couple of reviews for us, and then I think he just got too busy. But it's kind of interesting that we have Mark's review on there. So. Cool. Well, the last one I have is 12th Night, and then it's at Open Stage in Fort Collins. 12th Night is a great Shakespeare show. It's a great, I don't know, maybe sort of entry level Shakespeare
Absolutely.
Show. Yeah,
it's kind of a musical comedy because it's got so many songs.
Yeah,
and it's wacky.
Yeah. And it's also outside at an area called the Park at Columbine Health, and it's running June 8th through July 13th. I did notice that their show last night was canceled due to thunderstorms. So there's that's alfresco theater is always going to have that hazard, but you don't want to get a tornado sweeping everybody out of there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm just going to mention a couple other shows that we have reviews up on the site, or that we will have soon. So our reviewer April Took saw Four Old Broads at the Funky Little Theater Company, and I'm sorry to say that one will be closed by the time you hear this, but it sounds like that was a great one. And then I will do my best to say this correctly: Fuente Ovejuna at Wheat Ridge Theater Company. So Eric Fitzgerald reviewed that on the site. An old Spanish play, like several hundred years old, that they did there.
Yeah, I think it's like, 14th or 15th century?
Yeah.
It's like, I
think 15th century, yeah. And then up in Silverthorne at Theater Silco, they're doing Moriarty, which is another Sherlock Holmes-derived thing, but that was written by Ken Ludwig, I believe. And then Two Cent Lion Theater Company, their show Josie's Diner is at the People's Building in Aurora. They debuted it at the Denver Fringe Festival, and now it's up there for a few weeks. Buntport testing 1, 2, 3. I will have a story about that here pretty soon. We talked about that earlier, but definitely lots of fun to get out to Buntport and see that. And then Conifer Stage Door Theater is doing Sweeney Todd. I will be at that one. And then I will try to say this without cracking up. At the Butte Theater in Cripple Creek, they're doing something called Darling Donkey Derby, which of course is like a melodrama. But Judith Sears, our reviewer down in the Springs, was like, "Yeah, I'll go check it out," because we've never reviewed any of their shows at the Butte, and so yeah, that's a long-standing program down there. So interested to hear what Judith has to say about that one. So check all that out on our site at onstagecolorado.com. And if you hold on, we'll get to my interview with Caroline Bowman, who plays Elsa in the touring Broadway production of Frozen, which will be opening here at the Denver Center this weekend.
Caroline.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right. So, hey, we're here with Caroline Bowman, who is going to be at the Buell Theater in the Disney's Frozen production, the touring Broadway show as Elsa. So, Caroline, thanks so much for being on the OnStage Colorado podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. And so you have man, what a cool role to play. And you've been doing it for a few years now, right?
Yeah, I've been doing it for 5 years minus the pandemic. I have I'm the original Elsa on tour.
All right. Well, so what is it? Obviously, you really like this character. You wouldn't keep doing it. What is it? What do you love about playing Elsa?
I do. I love so many things about her. I mean, I love that she is a woman that's coming into her own and she doesn't quite know where she fits in the world. And then you watch her discover how special she is on her own. I mean, she didn't, and then I love her song she gets to sing. I love that it's a Disney show. I just love so many things about her. I love her costumes. I love her hair, on a superficial level, I love it all. I love it all. It's why I've been able to play this role for so long.
That's great. So, I haven't seen the musical, so I'm looking forward to coming to it next week. But I have seen the film, and the film was known. The "Let It Go" song was kind of really famous for that initial performance that was in the film, which it's got it's a really challenging song to sing. Is that still something that you really enjoy going out there and doing?
Absolutely. There's never a day I'm not nervous because I know everybody knows that song.
Right.
So I have to kind of release that expectation of what people want from the song. Granted, I have been singing it for a long time, and I have to, in order to sing the song correctly, I have to kind of let it go.
Right.
And it's so fun, and the magic that happens on that stage is, I mean, like you've never seen before. I mean, it's really incredible. But I do really love doing that every day, and I have a blast. And the way my heart races still to this day is a test. Like, it's why I've been able to do this role for so long, because I still get a thrill. It's a thrill, and I have to give everything I've got. And it's wild. It's really takes it out of me. I sleep really well after playing this role.
I bet. So, this is Disney's Frozen. There's not a lot of, ad-libbing or improvising or anything in a show like this. But, I mean, how has your understanding of the Elsa character changed over the years that you've been playing her? Are you still finding things about her that are new? Or
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the gift of playing her this long, is that I kind of now, because I know the story so well, and I know all my lines, I know all the songs, I kind of get to play. I actually get to play, and I get to play within the realm of the world, and I'm like, oh, maybe she's thinking this here, or depending on how I feel that day, I don't know. It's fun to kind of continue to deepen my understanding of her, and I really kind of know what she's thinking at every moment, and I I have this level of trust in myself and in the knowing of the role, and that you don't always get as an actor, you don't always get to do a show this long and play a role this long. So I get to play within her, and I get to play vocally with her songs, and I'm really trusted by the music department, and I'm trusted by our creative team, and so I just kind of get to live on stage, and I'm discovering new things about her all the time, and where I can be more playful. And she is she's a cold character, for lack of a better word. I mean, she's the ice queen, but she is dealing with a lot of internal trauma and anxiety. And so I gotta find ways she is a young woman, so she does have a playful side, and she does yearn to have this relationship with her sister, which is filled with love. And so in order to find a way to make her a more interesting character, I have to infuse that there has to be playfulness and there has to be love there and warmth. And so playing with that has been fun, because nobody wants to watch somebody deal with anxiety for 2 hours on stage. That's not why people go to the theater, right? So it has to be an escape, and it has to be why is she like this? And so I ask all those questions, and it's fun. It's really fun.
That's great. Yeah, and she is among Disney princesses. She's really she's on the darker side, and a very complex character. And I can see how, especially like girls and teenagers in the audience might relate to. So she's accused of witchcraft, and she's been kind of ostracized and all that. And does it seem like, I don't know, with all the news about social media, bullying and all that, do you think, is that part of the reason Elsa still resonates with fans?
Yeah, sure. I think absolutely. She is a character that is totally misunderstood. She's being told she is not allowed to really show her gifts that she was given, she was born with, and she's conditioned to believe that she is dangerous, and just all these things that are super problematic, especially to a young kid. And then you grow up and you don't quite know who you are. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And so she's kind of this like character that people look to, because she does overcome that, and she does get to be free within herself. And she does have she learns that people will accept her if she stands firm in who she is and her power. And so I think that's really empowering to young and old alike. I think people come and are like, I feel close to Elsa, and that's a responsibility that I don't take lightly. I know what she means to people. I know what she means to me, and my story and who I am. And so I try to honor that people are coming, and I think also even people who come to see the show not expecting to be emotionally carried away, they tell me at the stage door, they're like, wow, I did not expect to cry that much, or I did not expect to release that much. So I think it's a more emotional experience than people expect coming to see the show.
Yeah. And I was also thinking, there's this isolation that she deals with that might have been especially poignant, or sort of around the pandemic or after it, that people would have related to. It's like, she was the ultimate, distancer. But you mentioned talking to some of the reactions that you hear. How much do you engage with the fans, and what's it like to meet them?
I mean, I'm usually stage door, and obviously every single stage door at these theaters are different. So it depends. Sometimes there's a lot of people standing there and sometimes there's not. So that's when I really get to see people in person. But yeah, I've had there's been really special interactions with people, and people want to share their stories with me at the stage door. And obviously I have to create a little bit of a boundary there or else I'd stand at the stage door for an hour after the show, and I do have to do it twice a day sometimes. So, but it's touching. It's touching. People want to tell me what Elsa means to them and how much the show means to them. And people come back. I mean, I've met people around America who've seen the show multiple times, and I'm like, how? I just think, they clearly travel to come see it because the show is really important. And obviously the show's not on Broadway anymore. So we're the American, Broadway version of Frozen. And it really does touch my heart. I mean, the fans of the show are really special to me. And, it's infused in my performance. These stories people have told me and how Elsa has gotten them through and how much the kids that this movie came out in 2013. So they're grown now, but it's still important to them. This was a part of their childhood, and then the new generation of kids are still watching it. It's still important to them. So, it's a story that's resonating with people for years and years and years. I think the Frozen hype is going to continue.
Is this the kind of show where do a lot of the kids show up with costumes or dressed up?
They do. And I think that's really special too, because they wear their gowns, their Elsa gowns or their Anna gowns. And then the parents had dressed up too, which I think is kind of, special because when I was a kid, I would get so dressed up. I'm from Maryland. And so we would go to the Kennedy Center and, it was this big event. And so we'd put on our best outfits, and I was always told to get dressed up for the theater. And I feel like over the years, it's been a little lost, that it's not as heightened of an experience. And so I feel like it's kind of reinvigorating that idea that theater is an elevated experience, and that, you get dressed up and you go to have this experience that only happens once. And so I love it. I love that the kids are getting that dressed up, because it kind of makes everybody get dressed up for the theater again, and have this experience. So, it's cool. That's really neat.
That's great. So, and also you've got superpowers. It's got to be cool to play a character that's got superpowers, right?
Oh yeah. It's my dream. It's my dream in life. I want to be a Marvel or DC. I want to be a superhero in a movie. So that's my next goal. So I've done it on stage. So
that's great. So, all right. Well, this is great, Caroline Bowman. It's wonderful talking to you. I look forward to seeing you on stage, and I'm sure that the gang, the kids, and the adult parents, and anybody else, you don't have to be a parent or a kid to enjoy this story. It's one of my favorite of the Disney stories in the last 20 years or so. It's really great. So,
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again. So Caroline Bowman will be playing Elsa June 19th through July 3rd at the Buell Theater in Denver, and we'll be out there to see you.
Yay, I can't wait. I love Denver.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, Caroline.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Well, that's it for this week's episode. I really appreciate Caroline Bowman taking the time to talk to us. She's a very busy actress and is touring the country and the world with this show. She's been all over the globe with it, and so it was really fun to catch up with her. So subscribe to the OnStage Colorado podcast wherever you get your audio, and let other theater lovers in your life know about us. Also be sure to check out all of the reviews, news, other podcast episodes, and our full statewide theater calendar on the website at onstagecolorado.com.
Yeah, and if you have any thoughts on the podcast, please feel free to share them with us on our social medias or via email at info@OnStageColorado. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll read any comments that we get, provided they aren't discriminatory or anything like that, on the show. So we'd love to hear from you and what you want to hear us discuss next week on the pod. And definitely feel free to rate the podcast wherever you are listening at the moment.
All right. So you've got a couple of 5-star reviews we've gotten recently. Who's saying stuff about us?
First one is from Jane Reuter, who is a past contributor to the site and a current reporter over at Colorado Community Media, who says, her 5-star review, best resource there is for all things theater in Colorado. Very thorough calendar. Also impressed with not only the quantity of reviews, but the geographic area the reviewers represent. It fills a much-needed void in the theater world.
Yay, thanks, Jane.
Thanks, Jane. And then I got another one here from friend of the podcast, Julia Toby, who said, really appreciate OnStage Colorado's coverage of local productions and the Colorado theatrical landscape. Fair, informed, thorough commentary by seasoned theater goers. I applaud their hard work, dedication, and time invested. Bravo. So, thank you so much to both Jane and Julia. We really appreciate your kind words, and we're thankful to you as well as all of our podcast listeners and site viewers for tuning in each week. We really honestly couldn't do this without you and wouldn't want to do it without you. So we're always open to suggestions for how to make this even better. So just make sure to don't be a stranger. Reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, we're always looking for topic ideas. And sometimes, Tony and I look at each other like, what are we going to talk about this week? And we always think of something. So but we'd love to hear from you as well. So, all right. Well said. We look forward to connecting with you soon. And in the meantime, I am Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca. And we'll see you at the show.
Oh, yeah.